Welcome on in to another action-packed edition of the Between the Hashmarks podcast. As always, I'm Matt Lombardo, joined by my friend, colleague, mentor, and the purveyor of the Two Deep Zone. Mike Tanier is here on a very special look-ahead Week 5 edition of the Between the Hashmarks podcast. And Mike, we have so much to get into today. How are you, my friend?
I think I'm doing okay, although I discovered something taking my walk today.
Okay.
I discovered that the undefeated world champion Eagles are in really big trouble.
Did you stop and talk to the crazy neighbor who persuaded you of this? Because I'm not seeing trouble looming on the horizon here for them.
Crazy neighbors, plural, first of all. Secondly, as I was taking a walk, the guys across the street were contractors. They got YSP on. On YSP, they are arguing whether or not they should be arguing about the Eagles. YSP has reached peak. Let's talk about whether we're overreacting and should we overreact to this. And, part of it is that there are several, speaking of, I'm looking at the list here and some of the crazy neighbors are joining, so I better watch myself. Part of it, of this is, of course, that the team has been sloppy. Part of it is AJ Brown's tweeting habits, etc. But a controversy has brewed around the team that has done nothing to brew a controversy in the last 14 months.
I'm just going to direct people to my YouTube channel at Matt Lombardo 975 because I had enough of this narrative even on Monday morning that somehow the Eagles were in trouble after going down to Tampa Bay and somehow the Buffalo Bills have issues being undefeated. They're the best running team in football overall. You look at James Cook, third leading rusher in the NFL. You look at the Eagles, their red zone defense is top 6 in the league. They're most efficient in the league over the last 3 games. They don't give up touchdowns inside the 20-yard line. We're going to talk Eagles. We're going to talk Bills. But the general gist here is that if you're worried about either one of the undefeated teams, go look at what the Eagles are doing defensively. Go look at the Bills' schedule. And then do me a favor. RELAX. 5 letters. Relax. Okay? Take a breath.
The 2007 Patriots aren't in the NFL right now. You don't have to beat them to win the Super Bowl. You got to get out there and fight, and everybody's a little grungy now. We're going to talk a little later about these other grungy teams that have so many injuries to worry about as opposed to receiver tweets. By the way, you're familiar with the A.J. Brown tweet, right?
I am, and I want to start there, but a little bit of housekeeping first. If you enjoy Mike Tanier's observations from his dog walks, if you enjoy, the superhero analysis blended with analytic deep dives, make sure you subscribe to the Two Deep Zone on Substack. It's independent NFL journalism at its best, mandatory reading, especially on walkthroughs. Subscribe there. You can subscribe to Between the Hashmarks on Substack as well. If you enjoy my insider analysis, the conversations I have with league sources that you're going to get a taste of during this podcast today, subscribe to Between the Hashmarks. Check us out on YouTube at Matt Lombardo 975. And if you can't join us on the Substack Lives, if you can't watch the YouTube version of the podcast because you're driving around, make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star rating and review. Those reviews really do help grow the show. And Mike and I will read them every week. Whatever you have out there, we will read them just like we're about to read AJ Brown's dramatic tweets.
Yes, I'm about to do that. Now, when you said, hey, why don't you do a dramatic reading of the tweet? I'm like, yeah, okay. And then I realized I recognized that it's from the Bible.
Yeah.
That is Jesus. That A.J. Brown was quoting Jesus because he didn't get the ball enough. He was quoting Jesus of Nazareth because he wasn't getting the ball enough. So I'm going to read this, but I was going to do like an Olivier, but out of respect, to not be sacrilege, I'm going to try to read this as sacrilegious. I'm going to try to read this as Jesus, because that way it's not.
That's a lot less sacrilegious. That's a lot less. Doing it as Jesus is a lot less sacrilegious than as Steve Martin on SNL.
Right. So let me do my best impersonation here on this football podcast of Jesus as tweeted by AJ Brown. If you are not welcomed, not listened to, quietly withdraw. Do not make a scene. Shrug your shoulders and be on your way. It's like a little Sermon on the Mount there, right? Nothing sacrilegious. No. It was like I was at CCD or it was in Sister Gertrude's class there. That was
you were doing a reading from the pulpit. You were in the pulpit doing the reading. It was fine.
I was a lector. I would talk when I was a lector, I would talk like that if I was doing Jesus. Of course, lectors don't do Jesus, Catholic. Never mind. We're not getting into all of that. You were talking to people around the league. What are you hearing about the actual A.J. Brown biblical crisis?
Yeah, it seems like the tweet has sparked this media-driven trade speculation that you're starting to see AJ Brown's name pop up on like those mid-season, trade boards that we see at your former employer that they like seem to write every week, or journalists will put out there like, oh, maybe AJ Brown is an option. So I talked to two different sources in two different buildings around the league, and no one has heard anything even hinting that Howie Roseman and the Eagles would consider trading AJ Brown right now. The consensus seems to be that this is, quote, wide receiver wants more targets antics, unquote. That seems to be what A.J. Brown is trying to do here. But I did find it interesting that just before we got on the podcast, an agent who represents a couple of receivers, not A.J. Brown, but is familiar with that market, obviously, and is talking to teams about his clients. He told me, I just asked him, what are you hearing ahead of the deadline? What's popping for you? And he said, I'm not hearing much, but keep an eye on A.J. Brown in Philly, maybe. So I'm not sure what to make of this, but I just look at it. I know Howie Roseman. You know Howie Roseman. They built a team where the offense is at its best. It's at its peak efficiency when A.J. Brown is the focal point. We've seen that time and time again. We saw it the second half of that game that they won on the blocked field goal against the Rams. That doesn't happen without A.J. Brown's second half. We saw a couple of games last year where A.J. Brown in the passing game were the focal point. I don't get the sense that Howie Roseman is in any sort of rush to make phone calls and trade A.J. Brown for a second-round pick next year. I just don't see them weakening in a peak Super Bowl window when you're undefeated that there's any chance A.J. Brown gets moved.
And AJ talked to the press yesterday, and when he's not quoting Jesus, he talks in terms of almost like therapy culture. He sounds like somebody who's been to counseling, because he'll say, "Well, yes, my frustrations boiled over. I said that. Yes, I do want the ball more. It is frustrating, but no, I don't want this to be an issue." He talks very much like a mature adult about the fact that he went and vague booked because he was in a bad mood. You know what? And he says antics. I like to think of it with wide receivers. There's like DivaCon 5 to DivaCon 1.
Yeah.
And like DivaCon 1 is like Antonio Brown, DivaCon 5
and running off the field at MetLife Stadium. That would be DivaCon 1, right?
DivaCon 1. Yeah. DivaCon 5 is like Terry McLaurin in the offseason. Like, I want more money, so I'm not going to practice. That's just what your star receiver does. I think we're maybe at like DivaCon 4. So
you're going forward here.
No,
wow.
No, one's the worst.
Gotcha. One's the worst. Yeah, I know it. You know what it is? My wife will say, oh, the kids are at DEFCON 5, and she means DEFCON 1. So my brain, I know it's DEFCON 1, right? But I have to correct her and be like, no, it's not DEFCON 5. You mean DEFCON 1 right now. That's what you're trying to say.
I'm worried that in the Pentagon they make the same mistake. That's what keeps me awake at night, that they have it backwards too, and that they're all making the same mistake. So we're at a low level here where it's like, okay, we've bubbled up that the frustration after a month got to vague booking. Okay, and then he backs down from it. And I don't see that being an impact. We can talk about the team struggles offensively, the fact that like the injuries are piling up, et cetera, the fact that we do have a tough opponent in Philly against the Broncos this week before it gets easier. But to start talking about the team intention and friction, and for Eagles fans, the ghost of 2 years ago, I don't see that.
I don't see it either. But remember, after A.J. Brown was seen reading Inner Excellence, Train Your Mind for Extraordinary Performance and Best Possible Life on the Sidelines, Jim Murphy became a bestseller that week. It changed his life. The amount of copies of this book that were moved because A.J. Brown saw it on the sidelines. Mm-hmm. If he goes and he catches 8 passes for 112 and a touchdown on Sunday, we're going to see a Bible bump. Are we going to see Eagle fans realizing that this was a Bible verse and they're going to rush and buy the Bible to support A.J. Brown?
Jesus is like, thank you for the shout out. I haven't had this many shout outs since the Grammys. Jesus is really excited by this, that A.J. Brown is comparing his situation to what happens in the New Testament. That's madness. There was some other Eagles chatter on a less gloomy, doomy, weird, insular Philly thinking note. And that involves the field goal kickers. And as you know, I wrote a thing about long field goals where I actually did the.
I cut it out and I have it sitting next to the third TV in the war room. I cut out the chart so that I know I can go over. I can reference it while I'm watching the games on Sunday.
Right, because you need to know, oh, it's 73%, not 72% now. So, yeah, that's what I hope people would do. After I wrote it, Vic Fangio talked about it, and he said the reason why the kickers are better is because it's all about the balls. Okay, specifically the K balls that now get to go into the skunk works where all of Tom Brady's former minions and the deflator and everybody can get a hold of them and do kind of wacky stuff to it. Now, other people have said no. Todd Bowles just said no earlier today, but you talked to some people as well who had a different opinion on this or the same opinion.
I actually spent a half hour on the phone with Mike Westhoff, former special teams coordinator for the Denver Broncos and before that the New York Jets. He got really in depth on this, and it was a really enlightening conversation. And he said there's multiple layers to why we're seeing 55-yard field goals and 64-yard field goals being made at a much more consistent clip. He said, "quote It's a friendly ball. It's progressed to this point, but it's not an illegal ball. It'll compress. Okay. It's not a rock. It's not overinflated, and you can get a couple people to rub it up before the game, but it's not like the quarterback balls where they can like take them out and scrub them up and then toss them over to the backup quarterback and he can, scrub it a little bit more and the quarterback can take it home with them, but they work the ball a little bit." But he said there's a lot more that goes into this. He goes, every level of the operation is perfect these days. Every single snap is close to perfect because you're not trotting out your backup tight end as the long snapper. You have guys who do this for a living and they're on the field for 7 plays a game. This is what they do. Right. And what I thought was really interesting about that is the hold has gotten so perfect because of the long snapper that when they get the ball to hold it, the laces 9.5 times out of 10 are already out, based on how the snap is so perfected. So you have all of this that you can't push, like the tush push on a pass rush. And because of everything being so drilled down and so perfect, it's a 1.3 seconds from ball snap to ball kick. And as soon as the holder puts the ball on the ground, you're seeing kickers already moving with their plant foot before it's even there. So you're adding yardage because of how perfect the operation has gotten. And you happen to have the best athletes who have ever played kicker before playing kicker. So all of this is actually special teams coaches and kickers operating at a higher level than they ever have before. And the ball is just like one variable of an equation.
And that goes with what Todd Bowles said, where it's just they're terminators now. The kickers are terminators. And I guess the snappers are terminators and the holders are terminators. Long story short, it's there. This is the NFL for the rest of the season. And whether they go to change the rules or not, notwithstanding. By the way, it's probably worth keeping in mind that the Eagles now have a new snapper. And the Bills are going to have a new holder because they had to switch out their punters. Now, they brought in an experienced punter in Mitch Wisniewski, so he knows how to hold for punts. But these are things that you might want to start looking at if the NFL's turned to, 58, 59, 60-yard field goals. It's not a matter of a bad snap or a bad hold. It's a less than perfect snap or hold might be the variable there.
Correct. And it's all been perfected. And should we really be surprised that we're seeing this, right? Because the caliber of athletic kicker has gotten better. You're spending so much time specializing and perfecting each part of the operation. And you have a football that's a little bit friendlier than it had been in the past. You put it all together and it's perfect. And that's the NFL. It's the same thing with the tush push. The Eagles execute the tush push at such a high level because they practice it like they practice any other play in the playbook. You look at some of the things that the Bills do well, a lot of their run concepts. You practice it, you drill it till it's perfect. But what's interesting here is injuries, as you just alluded to, that's when you're going to start to see some chinks in the armor and some cracks because, if you're paying your starting offensive tackle $75 million, the guy who's replacing your backup offensive tackle who's on special teams, who knows who he is, right? Because you can't invest that kind of money because of how much money you're spending at the top. So you spend so much money on your starters, so much money on your special team specialists, and then it's like, who do you got on the practice squad, and should he even be in the NFL?
By the way, this is like our bad timing and everything. You mentioned that you were talking to Westhoff. I forgot I would have sent a question along to you. I could probably reach out to him. He hasn't talked to me in a couple of years, but here's a theory. All right. Because all the time was spent on the new kickoffs, that special teams session has had less time for punt returns and field goals and things like that. And the theory, this was on Aaron Schatz's podcast with me, that has led to more of the block kicks, more of the punt return touchdowns, etc. I don't know how. I mean, that's an interesting hypothesis. I don't know how true that is. I don't know if Westhoff would be the guy to ask because I want to ask somebody who's had to run practices.
in the trenches now. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but as far as the blocked field goals and extra points go, he said that the way that they're coaching, like a Jordan Davis, that you have a guy that's that big and you teach him to like corkscrew his body at the snap to get to hit the gap. That's how this is happening. That there's little techniques that you can kind of like teach guys to get the edge on the block. But you've been ahead of the curve on a lot of this, because it was last week when you wrote the in-depth feature on the kickoff returns. And Westhoff said today, he goes, look, if the ball is coming out off the kickoff to the 35 or 40-yard line, I just need my offense to get me 1 first down, maybe 1.5 first downs, and I'm in field goal range now because everything is so perfect with the snap, the hold, the operation of the kick. And we're seeing it play out. There's now 2 or 3 games that come down to team gets ball at the 40-yard line, team kicks game-winning field goal.
Yeah, to the point where if you're a wagerer and you're looking for action late in the game and this team scores to go up by 2 points and there's 22 seconds left and a timeout, look at the wager for the other team to win, see if you can get any action on that. I have a funny feeling the house is on top of this already and they're not going to give you any extra juice. But the possibility of a turnaround being that quick, a kick that gets out to the 35, 1 first down, 58-yard field goal wins it. That's getting more and more common. That's something if it's a neutral game for fans to look at.
For sure. And, one thing that Vegas I don't think was on some of these contenders. Some of these contenders that have just been besieged by injuries.
Right. You can't handicap injuries, really. And, some of these teams are a mess. We're talking about Eagles fans like, 4-0, but look at this and this. There are teams right now just looking at their injury reports saying, well, how are we going to get through the next 3 weeks? And I want to throw some of these at you. Okay. And the title of this was, Give It to Me Straight, Doc. Do I have a chance? Okay, so we're going to ask you like a long-term prognosis. Like, I'm not going to ask you what's going to happen on Sunday, although maybe for the first team we do. But we'll start with the Baltimore Ravens, who have a brace of injuries, including Lamar Jackson, out at least 2 to 3 weeks. Now, let's assume that that's accurate. But because if Lamar's out for the season, we know the answer. Lamar's out for 2 to 3 weeks. Give me the prognosis, Doc, on this team. Do they have a chance?
They're dead. And I picked the Ravens to win the Super Bowl preseason. But we're sitting here October 2nd, Mike, and let's write the obituary. Here lies, on October 2nd, 2025, the Baltimore Ravens Super Bowl aspirations undone by the injuries, especially on defense. Let's read off the names. Travis Jones, questionable. Brent Urban, questionable. Roquan Smith, doubtful. Kyle Van Noy, questionable. Nate Wiggins, questionable. Kyle Hamilton, Chidobe Awuzie, Marlon Humphrey, doubtful. That's already with Nnamdi Madubuike on injured reserve, at least. I think he's out for the year, but at least 4 weeks. Yeah. Adisa Isaac, injured reserve. Some guy named Bilal Cohn, injured reserve. Roderick Washington, injured reserve. Yeah, we can talk about the Detroit Lions last year overcoming their injuries and limping into the postseason. But we saw what happened to them against the Commanders. They got boat raced out of their own building. None of their injuries were to Amon-Ra St. Brown. None of their injuries were to Jared Goff. None of their injuries were to Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. And the injury bug decided, after nibbling on them with Aiden Hutchinson in week 7, not to eat the meal until Thanksgiving. The Ravens are facing worse than Lions level injuries 4 weeks into the year.
Now, I'm not writing the obituary. Here's what I say. The Ravens got to get a win, either against Houston or the Rams. I'm thinking that they're going to get a win against Houston because the Texans' offense is a mess. And I think that you can get a week out of Cooper Rush as a quarterback. They get to the bye 2-4 or 3-3, but even 2-4. They turn around and their schedule gets very silly late in the season. There are a ton of winnable games, assuming they get Lamar back. And I'm going to take them off the Super Bowl tier. They're not up there with the Bills or whatever. Can they get into the playoffs? I'm going to say they still can. But of course, the Lamar injury, but they need to be able to scratch win against a Texans team that, again, is very one-dimensional, and a Rams team that is very good, very tough. But the Ravens get them at home. They still have this top-to-bottom roster. They still have guys like Derrick Henry and Flowers and everybody like that. If they get a win, they're fine. They are still on life support. I'm not writing that obituary yet.
The talent is there. The talent that they entered the season with puts them on the Super Bowl tier. The talent
Mhm.
that's on injured reserve or battling through injuries, that to me is the biggest issue with them because if they're full strength, I would take them up against anybody not named Kansas City or Buffalo, and I'd put them in that mix. But it just seems like the injuries have really decimated not just the roster, but the vibes seem off
Yeah.
coming out of Owings Mills.
Yeah, and I think that's a big part. Like they've got, and this is a team that has had ups and downs over the last years, couple of years, full of veterans, full of
Yeah.
veterans. They have to be able to turn the vibes around. So you're writing the obituary. I'm like, maybe I'm doing the preliminary research for the obituary. Let's switch, but stay in the same division with the Bengals, who lost Burrow, but losing Burrow seems to be like losing 4 or 5 people, and they have been unable to score, move the ball in the last 2 weeks against two good but not overwhelming opponents. Give it to me straight, Doc. The Bengals have a chance.
Slim to none, but there's a chance. Because
Okay.
of Baltimore, right?
Okay.
If Lamar Jackson's full strength, if that defense is raring to go in Baltimore, and the Ravens are firing all cylinders, then of course, without Burrow and being outscored like 76-13 over the past 2 weeks, would be the death nail in the coffin. But I think that Cincinnati. I think they need to be aggressive here. We're going to talk trade deadline later in the show.
Okay.
I think they need to go get a quarterback because Jake Browning is suboptimal. I think we've seen that. But what's worse is the offensive line. I think they need to go trade for at least one offensive lineman. And people can say, oh, why would they be buyers when they can't move the ball? The issues with the offensive line aren't systemic of this year with Jake Browning. Joe Burrow was lost for the season a couple years ago because of the offensive line. Joe Burrow takes on all kinds of pressure, gets the turf toe injury this year because of the offensive line. Go get an Evan Neal. Go get a Trevor Penning. Go get a couple of offensive linemen, and maybe one or two of them work out that you can say, okay, we're going to sign you long term, that we don't need to draft for this position as urgently in April. But without any moves, it's none as of now. Slim chance. Life support.
Yeah, and you mentioned the offensive line, and to be clear, they've had a rookie starter at one guard position. They've had to go sort of the veteran off the bench in the other guard position. The right tackle has been playing very poorly, Amarius Mims. So it's up and down the line. In the past, they had more veterans there, but the guys have been aging out. And you saw that. You mentioned all those things. But the running game isn't working, in part because the offensive line isn't particularly sound. So what you saw really in the last 2 weeks was Browning saying either quick game that's going nowhere, or here you go, T, here you go, Jamar. And it's not enough. It's not enough right now because it's like, oh, you get pass interference penalty against Jamar and you kick a field goal, whatever. That's not enough. Teams are just playing a shell. They got the safeties deep to stop that. I'm going from, this is a team that went from the wild card tier to me to the it's not going to get done. We'll talk about the quarterbacks. You mentioned the guards. Your guards are Evan Neal and Trevor Penning. Evan Neal.
Look, change of scenery. The argument here is change of scenery, right?
The Eric Flowers.
For first round pedigree, he's Mekhi Becton. Could he be Mekhi Becton? Where you're terrible, you're first round bust, you can't get on the field, but you get with the right offensive line coach, and there are only so many Jeff Stoutlins. You don't shake a tree and Jeff Stoutland falls out of it from an offensive line standpoint. But you get him in the right situation. Could he be? He could be competent, maybe.
Okay, I see it. Penning's been on and out with injuries, and they have other injuries on the Saints, but we'll bottle that. So we have the Bengals. We're sort of at the slim to none. We're like coming up with solutions.
We're having the conversation of do you pull the plug? We had the conversation with the next of kin. Are they organ donors? Do you want to keep the plug plugged in? You tell me. You make the call. You want to go make a trade to save your season? Great. Otherwise, we'll get the organ donor people in here and we'll move on.
This is the Bengals. They sell kidneys on eBay. They absolutely would to make a little extra money. This is a team that would sell blood plasma to make ends meet. No judgment if you've had to do that. We've all had times in our lives, but they're 2-2, so you got to kind of hold off here. But I'm looking at the schedule up ahead. It can get to 2-4 very quickly. How about now? This is a team that is 3-1 right now, and then the team after it as well. The Bucs. Now, Baker Mayfield was out of practice. He returned to practice today. He's going to play. Whether he's out there like in a hospital bed, he's going to play. But Bucky Irving is seeing second opinions about two different injuries. Mike Evans is hurt. Jamal Dean is hurt. I pulled up the entire thing. I'm not going to read it. That's not exactly compelling podcasting right now. But looking at these injuries, give it to me straight, Doc. Do the Bucks have a chance?
Of course they have a chance. Look at the division. You still get the opportunity to play the New Orleans Saints twice. You still get the opportunity to play Bryce Young and the Carolina Panthers twice in 3 weeks to close out the season. You still get the Atlanta Falcons, who are the Jekyll and Hyde of the NFL. 1 week, they don't want to play football ever again, and they're, walking home, giving up the sport. The next, they're punching the Commanders in the mouth. And you have Baker Mayfield. And Mike Evans is going to come back eventually. Emeka Egbuka is him. I mean, he's Offensive Rookie of the Year, carve his name in the trophy right now. And Jalen McMillan's going to come back in a few weeks. So, yeah, the Bucs have a chance. They're going to win that division, and they could wreck somebody's day if they're healthy come January. So, yeah, they have a chance.
All right, I'm going to throw a curveball at you because we're all in the same place with that. You look at the end of their schedule. Their schedule ends with Panthers, Bucks, Panthers. So this is a team that could be like sitting at like 7 and 8 or whatever.
Panthers. Yeah, Panthers, Dolphins, Panthers.
Panthers, Dolphins. Thank you. Right. So they could do the 3 wins at the end of the season. They could just catapult back up to where they need to be. So I'm going to throw one at you that you might not have put on the list. I didn't put it on the thing, but I mentioned to you in the text. The Commanders. Now, the good news is Jaden Daniels is back. Here's the bad news. McLaurin's injury is going to be a while. Debo is now injured. Noah Brown, who is chronically injured, now has a serious injury. They were all listed out on the injury report. Don't think any of them are playing this week. There's a chance Ladd McConkey, I believe, is their wide receiver 1. And the one thing that they've never had, even when they were very good last year, was a secondary they could count on. Cornerback Mike Sainstrell, who's usually the best guy in the secondary, first-round pick last year, he's out. So that's weakening them. So they're 2-2. Injury plague loss last week. Give it to me straight, Doc. The Commanders have a chance.
You know how high I am on the Commanders.
Yes.
I had them coming out of the NFC.
I know.
This many injuries, I think you have to kind of move them into intensive care. This many injuries at key spots. Jaden Daniels is the equalizer. I know they love Jalen Lane, and, he made some contributions on offense after what we saw on special teams. But I don't know that Jaden Daniels and Jalen Lane is enough when you got to go to Arrowhead, when you have to you play the Detroit Lions at home, when you have to go to Minnesota on December 7th, when you have the Cowboys and the Eagles twice at the end of the season. You talk about, murderer's row to end the year. Eagles at home, Cowboys at home at Eagles. I don't love it. I'll tell you that. If they don't get healthy quick, I don't love it. So we're going to put the Commanders in intensive care.
They're going to be in intensive care. They're at the Chargers. The Chargers have injury problems of their own, but those are focused like on the offensive line as opposed to all of this. They need somebody at receiver who's not like these guys like Lane and McConkey, and that's the entire thing. Am I saying it backwards? Is it Ladd McConkey? No, who am I saying? No, I'm thinking
of Luke McCaffrey. You're thinking of
Luke McCaffrey. Ladd McCaffrey plays for the Chargers. Yes, thank you. I had that backwards. Luke McCaffrey, who hasn't done anything. McConkey's been a good ball player. They need more than that, and they need to solve this problem at cornerback. Lattimore looks kind of toasted. Bobby Wagner at linebacker looks kind of toasted. I think he'd be best like being an edge rusher at this point. They've got a lot of things that you can pick at. You talk about the Eagles at the end of the season. The Cowboys can pick at your problems. Like for all their
with Green Bay, we saw it with Green Bay.
Yeah.
Watching that game on Sunday night, I was just texting back and forth with a scout friend of mine who works in the AFC, and he was like, "The only reason this game is close is because the Packers are playing you, me, and your podcast co-host at offensive line." That's the reality. When you're without Zach Tom, when you're without Elgin Jenkins, and you're playing a bunch of backups, it kind of is what it is. And you saw the Cowboys do that. Now they rose the emotion level significantly higher because Jerry Jones had it out for Micah Parsons. But if the Commanders are that banged up, Deron Bland's a still pretty good football player. Trevon Diggs is still a pretty good football player in that secondary. They were the biggest beneficiaries of having the Micah Parsons pass rush, the biggest detractors not having it. But if it's Jalen Lane and Luke McCaffrey at the end of the year against that secondary.
Yeah. No, it'll be is going to be a mess. They give you one more, and normally we would have led with this, but it's Thursday. People will be watching this on Friday, Saturday. I didn't want to age badly. The 49ers. I don't want to go through the list because we don't have all day of who's hurt, especially for the Thursday nighter. Tell me, Doctor, the 49ers have a chance.
Slim chance. Slim chance
Okay.
here.
Okay. Not tonight.
No.
Okay.
But I think that when you look at the fact that Arizona just finds ways to cough up games, you already have one win over them. I think that if you have Christian McCaffrey, even at 80%, Christian McCaffrey is gonna save you from a lot of situations. If Ricky Pearsall's healthy, they're gonna be okay. I don't think they're a Super Bowl team. I never thought they were a Super Bowl team, but I think that, long term, 17-game schedule, they're one of those teams that hangs around and weird things happen week 18. San Francisco could find their way in. Slim to none chance, but a slim chance nevertheless.
Yeah, what they have going for them is some of these injuries are short term. Like this is the Thursday night injury report, and like Brock Purdy should be back another week from now. Pearsall should be back a week or two from now. It's this persistence of the injuries that bother me. What they've got going for them is like what you mentioned. They are 2-0 in division, so they've got like some tiebreakers in their back pocket. 3-0 in the conference. The issue is if they get these guys back, but if they're hanging around in that like 500. There's not going to be room on the wild card train. They're going to have to win the division. I think the Rams are a better team in the division. If they start getting into the wild card pile, that's where the Falcons, that's where the Packers, that's where the Commanders, if they're in that group, I don't think they can hang with that group at the level of established health I know they're going to be at, which is they don't have Bosa. And that's right. And so their sack rate right now is extremely low. So the team that used to be able to be like, well, we're going to go out there and win with this balance between our defense and offense. They're going to be asking the offense that is now like, well, when's that you coming back? When are we going to get Kittle back, et cetera? We're now really looking for that. When are they going to be healthy enough? Week 7, week 8, week 9. The further you go down the schedule, the more like they get to the point where they might get swept by the Rams. And if they do get swept by the Rams, that would be week 10, by the way. Then it's like,
right.
That's it. And that's assuming they lose tonight.
And if you don't win enough games to keep yourself in the wild card conversation, that's it. That's all she wrote. You're missing the playoffs for a second straight year. But you brought up the Nick Bosa injury, and I know we're going to talk some trade deadline stuff. Had a conversation today. One name to watch from a couple sources that I spoke to ahead of the deadline is an edge rusher, Arnold Ebiketie, down in Atlanta. Could be available, probably going to be on the market from people that I spoke to, especially after the Falcons went out and they drafted the 2 edge rushers early in this year's draft in Jalen Walker and Pierce. But Ebiketie is a pretty good football player. He has, I'm trying to pull up the numbers here, 14 and a half sacks through his first 2 seasons, 39 pressures last year. Could be change of scenery guy. And if you're John Lynch, you're looking at the fact that the Falcons have a log jam of edge rushers. I could see San Francisco picking up the phone and saying, hey, we'll give you a 4th-round pick for Arnold Ebiketie as a fix for Nick Bosa this year and a compliment on the other side of him next.
Where did he go to college?
These guys, I'm not too thrilled after what happened on Saturday night, but yes.
Were you there? Were you there?
I was not. No, thankfully. Okay. The people who we share season tickets with, they netted out, I think, close to like $1,800 for the 4 seats, which we weren't able to. The old man and I were not able to match that offer. Yeah.
And you had a better experience as a result of it there. But
I could go to bed at midnight rather than feeling miserable on the 3-hour drive home at 4 a.m. Yes.
Like I'm looking at Ebiketie's snap counts are down because of Jalen Walker and James Pierce, and they're blitzing more and they're getting more pass rush. So it is like there is a logjam. They don't need all those guys. That'd be an interesting one. And the market for him, because you have a young pass rusher. It's not like, oh, we're going to drag Von Miller out again. Like, here's a guy you could sign for 2 or 3 years off of the contract and keep in there and make a rotation player. Like, why wouldn't, let's name the team we always name, the Lions.
Right. The Eagles.
Yeah, the Eagles.
Those 2 teams need edge rush help. Why wouldn't you pick up the phone and say, hey, we'll give you a 3rd-round pick or we'll give you a 4th-round pick as a guy that it kind of follows in the Montez Sweat category of, I think it was a former second round pick gets traded and they
Yeah.
sign him immediately after the trade. And now he's a fixture along the Bears front seven.
Right. And those will be because the Eagles keep losing edge rushers right now. Everybody gets hurt. Next man up, he gets hurt. That is turning into a problem. Lions didn't have anybody to begin with except Marcus Davenport, who they knew was going to get hurt around week 3. So those would be good moves. Now, I like that. We've talked a little bit about the trades, and you wrote a trade deadline article, and I don't want to come after you hard here. Because if Verderame was on here, I'd be ripping him to shreds. Because Matt, I saw what you wrote. I know you were tasked with writing a trade for every team, etc. And I don't want to be too grouchy, but the trade deadline article. Tell our viewers the trade you suggested between the Giants and the Packers.
Just looking around, looking at the Packers logjam at receiver, looking at what happened in Cincinnati when Burrow got hurt, looking at the fact that the Vikings have to start Carson Wentz, looking at the fact that, Cooper Rush is probably going to start for the Baltimore Ravens, and the Packers have Malik Willis, as their backup, and Malik Willis doesn't, blow me away. The trade that I put together for the Giants and the Packers was the Giants send Russell Wilson and a 6th-round pick, I believe it was, for Romeo Doubs to the Green Bay Packers, who have a wide receiver logjam. They funnel like 20% of their offense through Tucker Kraft anyway. They want to get more snaps and more targets from Matthew Golden. You're going to get Jaden Reed back in a couple of weeks. You're going to get Christian Watson back in a couple of weeks. You have Dontavian Wicks. Like, somebody's got to be the odd man out here. Why not Romeo Doubs?
Because he scored 3 touchdowns on Sunday night? Can I give you that as one reason? I'll get, or to backtrack off of that for a second, do you think Russell Wilson has any trade value whatsoever?
I think it could be a throw-in. I think it'd be like a throw-in to be a backup quarterback somewhere. Teams care about backup quarterbacks, right? I mean, how often do we see, teams sign a veteran backup in the offseason? The Giants doubled up for some reason and signed 2. I don't know why you had to go and get 2.
And now they're trying to get rid of one, which shows you how much value he has. We doubled up. We got 2 of them. And now I would rather have Malik Willis as my backup in the system than Russell Wilson coming in after getting benched after 3 games. And I don't think it's close.
He got benched because of Jackson Dart. If it's Tommy DeVito, if it's Tommy DeVito and it's Jameis Winston, you're not benching. I don't think you're benching Russ. I don't think you're benching Russ for either one of those guys. But when you have the number 25 pick in the draft and you have a head coach coaching for his job,
right?
It's a different conversation, in my opinion.
You talk about throw-ins. When I go to Jersey Kebab and I get my sampler platter, pitas and hummus and baba ganoush, and I get myself a nice kebab, and every single time the fellow wants to throw in a little baklava. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't like baklava. And I think they make top-of-the-line baklava. I don't like sweets. You see me, I rarely eat a sweet. That's like the sweetest stuff in the world. But no matter what I ask them, I'm going to tell them that I have an allergy. So they stop.
So they don't sneak it in there. They don't try to sneak it in.
It's very kind of them. I get it. And they're trying to sort of promote like the desserts are expanding their desserts and everything. But you talk about a throw-in, the baklava is still sitting on my table from 3 days ago. Okay. Now, the difference between the baklava and Russell Wilson is that the baklava is good. If it's still sitting there about 3 weeks from now, it will be as stale and rancid and crusty as Russell Wilson is now. Okay.
Fair. It's a fair point, but I just don't know. I don't know that I trust Malik Willis more than Russell Wilson, especially if my philosophy on offense is throw it down to Matthew Golden, right? On the deep ball. Because the one thing we saw against the Cowboys was Russ still has the deep ball to Malik Neighbors. And the reason the Giants will make the trade is they need to get a receiver to help develop Jackson Dart. I like Darius Slayton. He's a great guy, right? Covered him for the first 3 seasons of his career in that locker room every day. Good dude. Competent wide receiver. Wan'Dale Robinson is the forever potential. Oh, Wan'Dale Robinson's really good. Show me. Go do it,
Yeah.
right? Jalen Hyatt. Oh, Jalen Hyatt's going to break out. He hasn't done squat. We're waiting for this Jalen Hyatt breakout that's never going to come. And you're trying to evaluate your first-round quarterback this year. You have 13 games to do it now. You need to go get receiver help. So whether it's upping the draft pick, whether it's, adding Evan Neal into the conversation because the Packers need linemen.
Who orders a baklava? Here's more baklava. Look how much of it is. It's been sitting in the windows since August 3rd.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I guess my whole thought process was Romeo Doubs coming off the big game.
Yeah.
Value's never going to be higher.
Okay.
We never really had a number one wide receiver in Green Bay. And Jaden Reed was the guy last year. Doubs is the flavor of the moment. Christian Watson's supposed to be that guy, right? Watson's coming back. They figured clear the logjam, get an asset, get something. That was the thought process.
Okay. And I get it. And also,
you could sub out to Dontavian Wicks because I think Wicks is a decent player too. You could sub out Doubs for Wicks. You could sub out, the receiver du jour that you want to move out of Green Bay. Doubs, they just figured market value. Maybe they'd strike when the iron's hot.
One thing about Doubs is this is a team that is looking to who can we pay in the future.
Yeah.
Like they're going to be juggling who's getting the contract extensions, especially after Micah. And Doubs is a guy who they might look at and say, he might be the odd man out on that list because we went to pay Reed. We took care of Watson, take care of Kraft. Golden's a year away. You can throw that out, whatever. So there might be impetus there. It's just coming off the 3 touchdown game. You're right. His value is high. His value to that team is high. So maybe in a week or two it'll look different, and they might say, "Hey, look, we can mess things around." I have a feeling they're not going to do it for a backup quarterback and a late round pick, though. If they do it,
yeah, probably not. My just thought was you start looking around and you look at these terrible quarterbacks. Maybe I'm overvaluing Russ. I'm overvaluing one game from Russ. I'm overvaluing the Cowboy game from Russell Wilson and thinking that's what he could be with a competent play caller with actual wide receivers.
Yeah.
All right.
I will sue you because like the last 5 years of Russ's career have also happened. And now I'm going to sue you for this one. You had you had a Dolphins trade to get a receiver.
Yeah, I did. I had him trading for Jacoby Myers, who seemed like he wants no part of being in Vegas, especially after Trey Tucker emerged. And Darren Waller, I don't know that that's sustainable. 2 touchdowns in his first game in 15 years. So if you're Mike McDaniel and you're Chris Greer and you're trying to coach and general manage for your job down the stretch, they're not quite dead yet. If you ask me, what are the Miami Dolphins dead? They're still kind of on life support after that win over the Jets. You could pick off a couple teams here and there. Why not go get a wide receiver to pair with Waddle?
I guess the idea, I get it. They won, they beat the Jets, that they're going to be buyers. At this point, that's the part I can't get my mind around. They're going to turn around and say, this season's salvageable. And are we bringing him in and we're going to get rid of draft capital to get to 7 and 10 in a, and hope that we go to Stephen Ross and say, look what we accomplished. We burnt everything in the world and we were almost the final wild card. I don't necessarily see that as a good option for that team.
Yeah, I guess my thought is desperation. If you're Chris Greer and you're Mike McDaniel and you feel like you have to do something. I mean, look, you're talking about an AFC right now where the Bengals are 2-2 and in free fall, right? If the season ended today, they have a 1-game lead over the Dolphins and they're the 6th seed in the postseason. You look at the Kansas City Chiefs, they are what they are. The Patriots, the Raiders, I don't know what to make of the Raiders. The Ravens are 1-3 as well. It just seems like you could quickly make some headway if you can win some games. I don't think you're winning games with Jalen Waddle, Malik Washington, and Darren Waller.
Right. I don't think so either. I think that there's a level of which, and also saying, well, Jacoby Myers is going to come in and do the things Tyreek Hill did. As soon as Tyreek Hill got hurt, it's this is the one thing that had them beating the Jets early in that game, besides the Jets fumbling early on. It's that, well, we have no answer for Tyreek. The reason the Bills game was close-ish being the operative word is because you don't have an answer for Tyreek. Jacoby Myers is not an answer for Tyreek. So you're bringing in a guy and it's almost like you're throwing another log on the fire and it's just going to burn.
The other thing with that is, I think two things. One, the Tyreek Hill injury, I think, torpedoes them in a lot of ways for this year from contending. But Mike, I'm not so sure that if Tyreek doesn't get hurt, if he's not the first receiver traded, right? I mean, I think the
Yeah,
Dolphins, I don't think they were married to him beyond this trade deadline. So with him being hurt, you can't trade him. And with an uncertain future, with a dislocated knee, if you're not married to him beyond next year, you bring in Jacoby Myers and you extend him. Now it's Myers and Waddle as your two receivers, and you go out and you draft offensive line help, or you look at fixing the defense.
but who's you? Is it Greer? I mean, is it McDaniel?
It's probably not unless you make the playoffs, right?
Right, which almost seems like it's a done deal anyway. It's difficult. I think Jacoby Myers, he is a very popular trade deadline option. He seemed like he wanted out in like August.
Yeah.
And he's playing well. I will throw together a lightning round. I give you some guys, and as the trade deadline getting closer, I ask you, you think they're actually going to move? Are you hearing anything, etc.? We're going to start with Mr. Captain Obvious here, Kirk Cousins.
I go back and forth on this one. I'm not hearing anything on Kirk Cousins being traded, so this isn't me reporting it.
Right.
I just think that the Falcons, if you were going to trade him because of the cap implications, you would have done it earlier to get draft capital and those sort of things. And you watch Michael Penix, high upside. The floor seems kind of low too, if we're being honest. And with the mobility, I don't think that you trade away a backup quarterback with his accomplishments. I don't think they take the cap hit. I think Cousins stays. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's been smoke and noise since like the start of training camp. Like at that point, it's like, this is the bed. We're going to make it. We're going to keep this guy around, in case of emergency, break glass, get whatever mentorship we can from him. If it wasn't like an emergency Bengals maneuver, then it probably wasn't going to happen. I knew that was a long shot, but like, yeah, you're not going to bring Cousins. And I think that there's a recognition Cousins' mobility is absolutely shot at this point, and that there's not a lot of enthusiasm there. But we have to put him on the list because he's going to be on the list every time people talk trade deadline. Here's one that I know that you got your ear to the ground on, and he's always on the list, it seems like. Thibodeau, Kayvon Thibodeau of the Giants edge rusher.
Yeah, this is one that I actually did some work on. In the mailbag piece, actually, on Friday, I asked around a little bit, and one NFL executive told me that they absolutely, quote, should trade Kayvon Thibodeau because they need so much help everywhere along the offensive line. They need help at other parts of the secondary. When you have such a logjam that you need to get the assets to do it. I had another scout tell me, quote, I think it wouldn't be a smart move to trade Thibodeau. He may not be playing up to his talent level just yet, but he's a really talented guy. And part of the issue could be the current people that are there on the coaching staff right now. If they trade him, they'd be trading from a position of weakness and get less value than they should, given where their season seems to be headed, unquote. I don't think there's urgency to trade Kayvon Thibodeau. I think they love the rushers that they have with all three of them on the field. And you saw Brian Burns get banged up in the Chiefs game, come out for a couple of snaps. Thibodeau went in there. It just seems like from a rebuilding, quote unquote, standpoint, it makes some sense to trade him. But I just don't think that they're going to do it because, again, he's a quality depth player and you can get some creative packages getting all three of them on the field at once.
That's for sure. You can definitely get all these pass rushers out there and cause mayhem. There was a little bit of that, I think, against the Chargers. He strikes me as a change of scenery guy. When you tell me about Evan Neal change of scenery, it's like, no, I don't think that's it. I don't think this kid is an NFL starter. Thibodeau's a guy. It's Thibodeau, right? Excuse me. It's Thibodeau. Thibodeau is a guy where it's like he comes and goes with the weather a little bit. And I think, what could Dan Campbell or Jim Harbaugh do to this kid? It's like you get one chance, or Quinn, you get one chance. They're not
Robert
trading
Saleh.
in a division.
Robert Saleh could be the spot. The 49ers could be an absolutely perfect fit for Kayvon Thibodeau to replace a Nick Bosa. I mean, you talk about that. That's as dynamic a duo as you're going to find going into next year.
Right. So, but we'll see, because I feel like we were there last year with Thibodeau, and it's just like, well, they chose to keep him. I think they're committed to their top draft picks. They don't want so many top draft picks around the league doing well.
Right.
It starts to look like, okay, we can't hide the poop anymore here in the Giants. These guys leave and do good. Daniel Jones does good. Saquon, we can't have another leave.
Yeah,
Um,
my best friend Jr. We've known each other since first grade, right? Diehard Giants fan. He's the one who actually asked the Evan Neal question in the mailbag this past Friday.
mhm,
And as soon as we were talking about this before I, did the legwork on it, he said, it's typical. You trade Evan Neal away, and he's going to go be a Hall of Famer somewhere. He'll go be a Hall of Famer somewhere else. And Giants fans have this ingrained in their mind that they
mhm,
are the AAA team for the rest of the NFL. They draft guys in the top 10 and they
mhm.
languish for 2 or 3 years. They go elsewhere and,
And
they're elite. They become elite. Once a Giant, always a future Hall of Famer.
I love it. Now the Giants have problems. Browns have problems. They have benched Joe Flacco in favor of one of Joe Flacco's children, I believe. There was a very tiny person. It was amazing. I was watching the film on Monday. I was not watching the Browns game on last Sunday, so I'm watching it on Monday morning. And all of a sudden, it's like someone pushed a button on the Madden controller, and it was like the shrinky-dink version of Joe Flacco. But of course, it was Dylan Gabriel.
Yes.
Okay, and Dylan Gabriel will be starting next week. We asked Shador Sanders about it, and he told us, guys, look it up. They have a really good rookie tight end there in Harold Fannin. He's one of the few things in the offense that's working. David Njoku, he seems to be on the trading block per most sources. You see him going anywhere. Joku, I said it right. Go.
Where's he going? I mean, my whole thing is, where's the
Yeah.
tight end needy team that's gonna
Okay.
pull off that trade? I mean, if you talk about a contender, yeah, it takes two to trade for him. He's a really really good player. David Njoku,
Mhm.
really good player, but I just don't see. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's a team that's going to flip a fourth round pick to bring in a weapon like him. But I just don't see the destination. Do you?
No, I'm rolling through it in my head. And I'm going through all the teams. It's like, what's your tight end situation? It's like,
Chargers, maybe the Chargers.
yeah, they have a certain kind of guy they like at tight end. They like these big, thumpy blocker guys. And Joku is the, smooth operating, space guy. And you're right. You go across the league, there's no like crippling injury, I guess, except Kittle. And he's going to be back. And I don't see them like making moves there. Broncos just did it. They brought in the other version of him and Evan Ingram, the veteran receiver guy. So it is tricky to find a market for this guy.
For sure. And, just to touch on the Shador Sanders thing real quick here,
Mhm.
I think that the pantomiming at the locker, I think that goes to show exactly what we were hearing going into the NFL draft. And I think that when you talk about, me talking to sources in multiple buildings ahead of the draft who said we had a third round grade on Shador Sanders, and then he comes
Mhm.
in and is disrespectful to the other draft prospects on a top 30 visit at the same time, disrespectful to the coaches, which this
Yeah.
is just people that I'm hearing, people that I've spoken to for 5, 10 years that I trust telling me this.
Mhm.
And that's how you dropped from third round prospect to fifth round pick, which is what happened with Shador Sanders. I think that when you go to your locker and you start pantomiming answers to the media, I
Mhm.
think that reinforces a lot of what I was told and what people had been reporting going back to the draft. Does it not?
He's a twerp. He's a twerp. We all go beat around the bush for reason X, reason Y, reason Z. He is a twerp. That's a level of disrespect for your fellow rookie, for the
Yeah.
teammate that you probably you've been standing next to for the last 6 months, doing going through your drills and everything like that. He has his moment to shine. He does not have to speak. There was some misunderstanding here. Backup quarterback does not have to come out and talk during these situations, right?
For sure, but then just say I'm not talking today, or better
Yeah.
yet, go. I'm not advocating players hiding, but if you're Shador
No.
Sanders and you don't want to talk and you want to make an ass out of yourself at your locker by like pantomiming and moving your mouth and not having words come out, the better
Mhm.
option is to tap the PR representative and say, "Hey, man." They're waiting at my locker. Can you just tell them I'm not talking today, that I'm not available?
Yeah.
There's
Right.
no league rule that mandates that the backup quarterback has to talk.
Right.
There's no league rule on that.
No.
And if you really wanted to get in front of this, then have a podium day. To tell them to go to the podium, have an actual press conference, and talk
Yeah.
about it. But this just reinforces this notion that Team Sanders, propping him up as a first round pick when that wasn't the feeling inside the league going into the draft at all, created this media firestorm during the draft, created unnecessary spotlight on him now when they go to Dylan Gabriel, QB2 versus dropping down to QB3.
Right.
And it just seems like, you know, when you tell the Baltimore Ravens, don't draft me because I want to go somewhere and play.
Yeah.
And this
Right.
happens, not great.
Right. And I know Florio was equating it to Marshawn Lynch. Marshawn Lynch was a star. And we're talking about like Super Bowl availabilities and playoff availabilities, which is a different set of rules. You're supposed to make the star players available and like in certain ways. And that's when he went out there and said, I'm just standing here to not get paid. It was not this situation. This is a situation where, right, the PR guys and say, okay, he's not talking today, et cetera. And of course, it's within your rights to say, hey, you know what? I'm happy for Dylan. I'm going to be prepared. My opportunity is going to come 110%. It is that easy to do.
Yes.
Guys learn how to do it in high school. You learn how to do it on the video game, where in the video game, if you're in career mode and you say what you're going to say, there is no click in career mode for go out there and act like a weirdo and pantomime when you know, the second string quarterback came in, because it's stupid. Okay.
Right.
So
it's self-sabotage.
Right. So I always want to give the young athletes the benefit of the doubt. I don't want to go after these guys. You have these moments of immaturity, et cetera. This is whatever. This is just a pattern of ridiculous behavior that is not NFL quality. It is not mature for a 14-year-old. And I'm not going to sit here and like mince words about a 23-year-old who should really know better after being a famous person and being raised in a family full of people with famous persons. Enough about this kid.
Yes.
Let's
Who's
go.
Next on our list? Who's next on our trade list?
Trey Hendrickson. Is he moving?
Can I give you an answer Monday?
Because okay, you want one more game?
They're the Lions, and you know, if this goes as badly as Monday night went for the Bengals, Dan Campbell might prop him on the team plane flying back to Detroit for his new team.
A kidnapping.
There might be a kidnapping in exchange for whatever the Lions can offer. But if they pull it off, and we revisit the conversation of go and get a couple offensive linemen in Cincinnati, then then you're obviously not trading Trey Hendrickson. But if the Lions drop a 50 burger on them, yeah, I could see him flying to Detroit on Sunday afternoon.
A willing kidnapping, like, oh no, they've got me. What'll I do? Getting on that plane. But you're right. But if there's another game, if the Bengals have 3 straight of this, I don't know what you do, because this isn't, we're on a losing streak because the backup quarterback's out there. We can't function at all because our backup quarterback. That's different.
Yeah, and I have, like 37,000 followers on Threads. A surprising number of Bengals fans follow me. And there is this groundswell in Cincinnati to fire Zach Taylor. And that they think Taylor's in over his head. I think that kind of might play into some of that, not having your team ready to play, even with the offensive line issues, even with Jake Browning. You ask what you do if there's another game like this. If we look up on Tuesday's pod next week, and they've been outscored 106-20 over the last 3 games, it might not be a conversation about Trey Hendrickson flying to Detroit with the Lions as their next pass rusher. It might be they could make Zach Taylor the first head coach that gets fired. And again, it's awful circumstances with Burrow being hurt and all the injuries up front or not having a competent line. But eventually you have to, same with Mike McDaniel, you need to figure out how to contend without your starting quarterback, don't you?
Contend, score, not go 3 and out. Has to be something, right? It's like these gradients. I'm like, it was a close loss to the Broncos or whatever. It's like you couldn't score. The second half was not even competitive. You're going 3 and out every time. That's unacceptable. By Halloween, this podcast, you and I will be replaced by Zach Taylor and Brian Callahan, Coffee with Friends, as they sit and talk about what went wrong with the Titans and the Bengals. Last one on this. And this comes from, I was reading Matt Verderame, and he did a trade proposal for every team, which is a thankless job because some of them are going to be a little manufactured to get 32 of them out there. A lot of Saints on his list, with the Saints being sort of sellers. Do you see any Saints player anyone has ever heard of moving at the deadline?
I could see Penning. I think, he might be the most
Okay.
valuable chip coming back. I believe final year of the rookie deal, so it could kind of
Yes.
be an audition second half of the year. A couple of people have said maybe Alvin Kamara.
Hmm.
If you start thinking about like the Chiefs, if they decide that they want to field a running game for the first time in this Mahomes Reed era, they
Hmm.
could go and get Alvin Kamara. But yeah, I think that they are completely laser focused on drafting a QB. That's just from talking to people there. They're trying to figure out what to do at quarterback. They don't
Hmm.
see Spencer Rattler as any sort of long term, short term answer.
Right.
So yeah, I think they could be sellers. I think that we could see some big moves coming out of New Orleans.
Yeah, Penning is the one because again, with them, like paying the next contract is always for the Saints. Like, oh my God, we have so many cap problems. We can trade. Probably we can pay Chris Olave. The money is there for Chris Olave. Is it there for Penning, who's been on and off injuries? Probably not. Why not try to move him at this point? Carl Granderson's a guy whose name comes up. I don't know. That defense probably falls out of the like they're just complete hopelessness at that point. I don't know if they want to like tank at that level. Kamara is interesting because every time you look at one of their veterans, you have to say, well, what will the cap ramifications be for them? And I
Right.
have and I have a funny feeling that they're going to look at that and say we might as well get the use out of Kamara right now and get to the point where we can amortize his contract our way. So it's tricky there to figure out what they're going to do. By the way, my thought, I got to look at the injury report. I see a Saints upset against the Giants this week.
Wow.
Yeah.
Without neighbors, do you think that's the big
Oh
reason?
yeah. Neighbors is the big thing. And again, with rookie quarterbacks, you get the first start and then you got the starts after that. Sometimes you get a little bump, sometimes you don't. I'm just feeling it. The Saints are not really good, but they were they are extremely bad. Let me make that clear. They played the Bills very tough. They are not on the field Quitzilla by any stretch of imagination. Rattler is uh, well below average, but like in a very sustainable way. Like he's not like a comedy routine out there. He's out there giving it his all and like getting the ball in the general direction. It's like Jake Brown. Like, I'm getting the ball in the general direction of Shaheed and Olave, and sometimes they come down with him. I think they can scratch out a win.
Interesting. I'm kind of
Yeah.
on the other end of this. I think that
Okay.
Jackson Dart provides just enough hope for the Giants this week and then comes careening back down to earth on a short week against Philly the following Thursday.
Hmm.
So I think that
Okay.
I think that you get a little more from the passing game out of Jackson Dart. I think you get just enough from the running game that you saw last week against the Chargers, against,
Hmm.
let's just call them what they are, the worst team in football, the Saints.
The things. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Boy, it's tough, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's interesting.
Panthers are
I'm not circling it, but what are you circling this week? What's your circle game?
I'm circling Chargers Commanders because I do want to see what the Chargers do with all these problems now on the offensive line. It sounds like Joe Alt is out at least for 1 week. Mekhi Becton is coming back from a concussion, but that's not 100%. He just returned to the side fields, but usually with concussions, you can kind of project into being there. And I want to see how the Commanders respond with Jaden Daniels out there with this very weak supporting cast, how he looks, how Cliff Kingsbury adjusts. Because again, we're trying to range find whether the Commanders are going to stay in, let's call it the Super Bowl tier in these circumstances. And now we got to see what the Chargers offense is going to look like if they say we're going to go through the next several weeks with backups at both offensive tackles. What does that mean for Herbert? What does that mean for a team that also lost Khalil Mack earlier? I want to see what these teams are so I have a better sense of how to range find them as playoff contenders. What do you have?
I have an interesting one, a game that I think could be kind of fascinating. Chiefs and Jaguars. It's the Monday night game.
Yeah.
I think it's a barometer measuring stick game for the Jaguars and how seriously do we take them both in the AFC South, and if you
Yeah.
can beat the Kansas City Chiefs, do we take them a little bit more seriously beyond just a division race? Is this the week that Travis Hunter comes alive? This time of year going down to Jacksonville, I know it's a night game, so it mitigates it a little bit, but from like a humidity standpoint and like just the elements of going to Jacksonville,
Hmm.
it can be a bit of a nightmare scenario. And from a Chiefs standpoint, a little bit of an opening now when you look at the
Yeah.
Chargers coming back down to earth, and especially with all the injuries the Chargers have. The Raiders looking a little bit fugazi. Let's just say it and call it like it is in Las Vegas. The situation with the Chiefs now getting 2 wins is a little bit less dire than it
Mhm.
had been. But it's a big spot for Kansas City. If they can get a win here over Jacksonville, you start to kind of build the momentum again.
Right. I feel. See, I look at that and I say, I think the Chiefs. The Chiefs are the Chiefs because they come into these things and this is where they get the win. Whether they have to manufacture it on the road or not, they get the win, especially against the Jaguars team. They are, if you really start watching their film, they will give you a headache in terms
Yeah.
of the number of like 3rd and 1. I swear they call a delay game penalty. I swear that they go into the huddle and say, let's just stand here and make it 3rd and 6, 4th and 1. There are these frustrating things. People talk about Brian Thomas, all the mistakes he's making, et cetera. But that's going to be a great game. And I'm looking at it. Let me ask you this. Ravens, Texans, over under 40.5. Ravens, Texans with all the injuries. You going over, you going under?
Pound the under. Pound the under, because if you've deemed them, the Houston Texans, no offense, all defense, right? And you have Cooper Rush
Yeah.
quarterbacking the Ravens against no defense. It's the movable object against the resistible force.
I'm thinking chaos over. The chaos over is when the offenses are so fugazi that it winds up being fumbles, pick sixes, you fumble at the 10-yard line and you kick the field goal, etc. I'm feeling the chaos over here. And this is like one of these weird old guy things where if it gets down to 39.5, by the way, I'm pounding the absolute daylights out of it, because that's when you start saying, okay, 1 pick six, 1 fumble the other way. There's 14 of your points, and where are the rest coming from? So I can't. Normally I'd be like the trash panda taking Cooper Rush and the Ravens. I can't because of the rest of the injury report. It's too bad.
It's too bad. So you see this game devolving into Vikings Bengals level defensive chaos. Okay, I could buy that argument. I could see it.
Right, something like that, and it won't even be like a 36-7 situation where the Texans are just taking the ball away, scoring, kicking field goal, kicking another field goal, kicking a field goal. 36-7 is an over. I'll take it. I'll take it. I don't have to know what's going on with the Ravens to know chaos could reign. So that's the way I'm looking at that game.
Mike, what do you have coming up on the Two Deep Zone?
Nothing. Taking a couple days off this week to take care of some family issues. If you go there, you will find the clip and save field goal chart for 50 to 62 yarders. I've not extended it to 68 yarders yet. Maybe in a couple months I'll have to, but you can actually find the rates. And again, coming up on Monday morning, you'll get walked through with all the usual stuff. We'll be talking about all the big games over the weekend. What do you got coming up?
Yeah, we have the mailbag on Friday where people can ask their questions to me, and I'll pose them to scouts, agents, coaches around the league, former players and the like, kind of get that inside the league perspective on the biggest questions that people have going into this coming Sunday. And of course, 4Downs on Monday, the biggest moments, biggest games, my analysis, the insight from executives and coaches and scouts and former players. So you want to make sure you subscribe there. Be sure you subscribe to the Two Deep Zone on Substack. You don't want to miss walkthrough. It's my morning routine on Monday. Drop my daughter off at the bus, my son at daycare, pour the coffee, sit on the back deck, read walkthrough, and then I start my day. So subscribe to Mike Tanier's Two Deep Zone. Subscribe to Between the Hashmarks on Substack. Check us out on YouTube at Matt Lombardo 975. And follow Mike on Blue Sky at Mike Tanier. You can check me out on Threads at Matt Lombardo NFL or at Matt Lombardo on Blue Sky. We're both verified again on Blue Sky, which is a lot of fun. Mike, any parting shots before we get out of here?
Stale baklava.
We'll talk to you next week.